Welcome to Groundwork. My name is Mike Collins, and today's episode is going to look a little different. When most people think about Christmas, they think about family gatherings, presents, the music, the lights, the nativity scene, and of course, the man in the red suit. And today, we have him with us here today, Santa Claus. Santa, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy December schedule. Thank you.
Yeah, at this time of the year, I'm up to my elbows in wrapping paper, and the only thing keeping me going are candy canes and cocoa.
That sounds about right. So hang in there. And I gotta ask, as far as name recognition goes, your name is up there with the Avengers. But as far as legends go, aren't you fictional?
Well, you see, that's a long story, about 1,700 years long, and then some. You see, back in about 300 A.D., I was known as Nicholas of Myra, a simple man, quiet man, and a pastor.
St. Nicholas was a pastor?
Yeah, absolutely. I cared for my community. I cared for my parish. I was known for being generous and helping the poor, especially children. In fact, there was one man I knew who had been swindled out of his fortune. He lost everything. His situation was so desperate that his 3 daughters were about to be sold into the worst kind of slavery. I couldn't let that happen. But he was too proud to accept charity. So under the cover of darkness, I went to his house, and through the open window, I tossed 3 bags of gold coins, one for each of the girls, and saved them from that fate. Now, I didn't want anybody to know. It was supposed to be a secret. But of course, the story got out. It spread all across Europe. In fact, the Dutch started calling me Sinterklaas, which is Dutch for Saint Nicholas. And that's how the whole gift-giving tradition got started.
Okay, so the beginnings of the Santa Claus story are actually rooted in Christian generosity. Mm-hmm. Well, how did you become who you are today?
Well, to begin with, you can thank a guy by the name of Clement Moore. He wrote a little poem, you might have heard of it. It's called "'Twas the Night Before Christmas."
Oh, yeah.
And in that story, that's where I got, somehow, a miniature sleigh, 8 tiny reindeer who could fly, and, the rosy cheeks, the jolly laugh, the pot belly. Well, I earned the pot belly, but that's how that happened.
So, there were no reindeer until the 1800s?
Of course there were reindeer, just not flying ones.
Okay, I just assumed that had been around longer. So there were no other adaptations. You've been the same since 1820?
No, even then I didn't look anything like I do now.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And you can thank Coca-Cola for that.
What did they do? Coke?
There was a man named Haddon Sundblom who was an artist in the Coca-Cola ad department. And he took Clement's poem, and it was in his visual adaptation, his drawings, that I got the suit with the fur lining and the rosy cheeks and all the rest that you look at and see today. And of course, over the years, other ad agencies picked that up and began adapting it and promoting it. And before long, I had turned from a bishop into a brand.
It's quite the arc. So your image and your story degenerated into commercialism to get people to drink Coke in the wintertime. It seems like Jesus was just pushed to the side.
Yes, in fact, some people actually confuse me with Jesus.
Huh.
And that's dangerous. Now, of course, we both came at Christmas time. We are known for being symbols of love. We give gifts. But I'll tell you, that's where the story breaks down. Because, see, my whole operation is based on behavior. You better not cry. You better not pout. See, because if you're good, you get rewarded. But if you're bad, well, we don't really do coal anymore because it violates some environmental restrictions.
Of course.
But you could get socks.
Oh, my goodness. And Jesus doesn't say, if you're good, maybe I'll love you. He says, you're loved. My grace will make you new.
Yes. And you see, I deal with what you do. Jesus looks at the motives of your heart.
So you check lists and then he heals motives.
Exactly. And then there's that whole wish fulfillment angle.
Oh.
See, they sit right here on the old knee and they tell me what they want for Christmas. And it's just like Amazon Prime, you expect it to be delivered right on schedule. But see, I do wish fulfillment. Jesus does real fulfillment, providing not just the desires, but the needs, love, relationship, salvation, a future.
Yeah, so Santa gives presents and Jesus gives presents.
Or to put it another way, Santa can fill a stocking, only Jesus can fill a soul.
And once you understand that, Jesus and Santa aren't at odds. You just put Santa in his proper place.
Exactly. And speaking of proper places, there's something I probably ought to mention before it gets brought up in the comments. It goes back to that whole thing about me being fictional.
I've heard rumors.
Yeah, you see, in my case, it happens to be true. Because if I was real, I wouldn't be able to do this. Yep, you're right. My whole identity is rented and has to be back at theater company by tomorrow.
Steve Harris, I suspected something was up. Thank you for playing Santa for us today.
I was made for the part, Mike. But before we get any further, I want to talk to you about how to keep Christmas in balance. Before we get into that, I need to get out of this. Oh, that feels much better.
Oh, good.
Now, I was saying before I changed,
Impressive.
I want to talk to you today about keeping the holidays in balance, not missing out on the fun, but still keeping the focus where it belongs, on Jesus. So to start us off, take me back to your early days, memories of your Christmases and how they've changed as you've become a parent and a pastor.
Sure. Well, having the opportunity to interview the real life Santa Claus was, I mean, that's once in a lifetime thing. And
Hopefully.
Hopefully. And we, talking about the commercialism, I feel like I was born into maybe the height of it. Because, or maybe it's just me, because raised as an only child with my mom and I living with my grandparents, you could say my Christmases, I never lacked for anything. So for me, Christmas was always about the presents. That's all I cared about. And I remember being about 10 to 12 years old, going to church at Christmas time. And our church did the whole productions and the choirs, and it was all great Christmas music and fun. Well, someone at church had the graphic T-shirt on saying Jesus is the reason for the season. And in my little adolescent mind, that was the first time that it started to stick, even though my family did so many good things. We had fun, and I knew, reverse engineering it, they were also keeping Jesus in there. But in my awakening perspective, it was all about the presents. And then it was this detangling the Christmas lore. You mentioned the night before Christmas, and you mentioned the historical evolution of the Santa myth. Growing up, even as a teenager, I had to remind myself that stuff is all fiction, and that the Bible is separate. Because in the Bible, you have flying animals or flying creatures. In the Bible, you have all of these fantastic images. So it's not a huge leap to think about elves. And you read the book of Ezekiel, and you're like, Christmas sounds tame compared to that.
That's true.
So a lot of it was, and I didn't do any of this on purpose, but I remember watching Christmas movies, reminding myself, like, this is different than what I hear at youth group.
Okay.
I had to take some real intentional thinking about it, moving into my mid-20s. And then when I had kids, everything changed from, I can't wait for the gifts, to, oh my goodness, there's another human in the house, to, we bought a little Christmas tree, because our big 6-foot one that we got when we were newlyweds, my daughter could grab it when she was a toddler. So we had to put it up on the table so the kid couldn't move it. But it changed from being me-centered, and life changed it to Jesus and having another little tiny human running around the house.
Well, you have the benefit of that background, but a lot of people don't have that. And if you don't have that kind of grounding, why do you think the commercial aspect of Christmas is such a big draw to people?
Oh my goodness, it's so loud and flashing. I mean, there's a reason why all the sounds in Vegas, the casinos, ding, 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 ding. It's Christmas does that to our whole culture, and those loud voices are saying your life is incomplete. You just need this one thing. You just need this next gaming system or this next piece of furniture, whatever it is. Those voices are so loud, and it can drown out the Santa was saying. There's wish fulfillment, and then there's need fulfillment, and those real needs get drowned out by all the superficial stuff that's shiny and more fun. And I don't want to demonize those things, because those are fun, but it is, to me, like the difference between junk food and nourishing food.
Yeah.
It's really fun to get that hit.
Right. But a lot of people, you say you don't want to demonize that, but a lot of people will do that for themselves.
Yeah.
They'll look at these fun aspects and say, well, if I'm really focused on Jesus, then I won't be attracted by the pretty lights and the nostalgic music and all of those things. How do you respond to that?
I'd say be careful of the pendulum swing. When you were saying, people demonize it for themselves, I got an image of pilgrims, and they're wearing their Protestant black. We're like, we'll show those folks that are going too far on the opulent side of things. We're going to follow Jesus. And they just looked so harsh. So if you feel your pendulum swinging, that's like a time to pause and say, wait a minute, because joy is underneath all of this. We sing joy to the world at Christmas time. And Jesus coming to this world is good news. It's the gospel. So Christmas is good news, and that's one filter I use. Of course, we can go overboard, but if we go overboard with the too simple and too, I don't know what word I'm looking for, too just strict.
Austere.
Austere. That doesn't sound like good news to me. It sounds like I'm in trouble.
Okay, so let's look at how to keep those two things in balance.
Yeah.
What are some suggestions you might have for a family that's looking to not spoil the fun, but maintain the focus?
Yeah. One thing that helped, it was almost like a truth grenade. It didn't go off until I was in my mid-20s and realized, oh, my family did this, and it was right under my nose the whole time. And it made a lot more sense in retrospect. But before we read presents, we would read scripture. And my family, we read the Christmas story in Luke chapter 2. But there's multiple tellings of it in scriptures. So it's not the only one. But it really framed that moment. And when I was 8 and 9 and 10, it felt like torture. Because my family read the scriptures so slowly. But I look back, and I can't tell you more than maybe a handful of presents I got in my adolescence. But my biggest, most overshadowing memory is of that moment. The whole family together on the couch, TV's off, and my grandpa reading Luke chapter 2.
Yeah.
It's one of my, I savor that, and I still carry that with me. I can't tell you what happened to my toys. I can't tell you what happened to the clothes.
We used to do that with my daughters as well. Only what we would do is we would read the Christmas story, and we'd take turns doing it. And then after that, we'd go around, the four of us, and we would share something about the story that stood out to us that we haven't talked about before.
That's good.
The faithfulness of Mary in the light of, the trust of Joseph when all the facts say one thing, but the angel said another. You face that problem in life all the time. So we'd try to focus on that aspect and humanize the story, so they had a little more real life context. But you're doing great. Give us some more.
That's so helpful to take them away from these people that just knew the right things to do to real people that were facing Do we trust God or not?
Yeah.
I love that.
And I'm sure my daughters went crazy with it, but now that they're in their 30s and one has turned 40, they've come back to me and told me how meaningful that was.
That's cool. And you know, with decorations, I think, what a great, easy way to have fun, to have whimsy, but it's a visual cue if you can start connecting the dots for your family. Light, you know, off the top of my head, you know, John chapter 1 talks about Jesus coming to earth, and it doesn't mention Joseph and Mary and the wise men, but it talks about light so many times in that chapter. Maybe when you light up the Christmas tree or turn on you have that Clark Griswold, your house is on fire clock. You have that moment, and maybe you read John 1 and talk about how Jesus is the light of the world. So every time your young kids or your family or even your relatives see the lights, there's a visual cue for that. And the evergreen tree, eternal life. There's so many of those beautiful Christmas symbols. The red, you know, Jesus's blood. White, the candy canes have a beautiful story that goes with it. I know there's here in Rancho Cucamonga, a lot of families will go down to Ontario where there's a candy store where they make candy canes and tell the story.
Yeah.
And those are still the core memories. There's still all the Christmas warm and fuzzies, and they're rooted in the Christian story. And I think any way we can point our families back to the Christian story and to the Jesus story, and that's rooted in joy. And I recently learned that kids will remember what we praise, but they don't want to be scolded into celebrating Christmas the right way. Like there's so many joyful things that we can celebrate, and as Christians, this is one of the best times that we're free to use our imaginations, and we can, you know, make up extra traditions with your Christmas decorations in your house. And you know, ours, a lot of families fight over, do we have whimsical decorations or do we have the fancy decorations that you want your neighbors to see? Well, we have a tree, the tree I got when our first child was born that the kids wouldn't. Well, they decorate that however they want. It doesn't matter if the lights are perfectly placed. But that's where all the decorations go that they made when they were the handprints. Yeah. Well, not only do they have fun looking at themselves, the younger versions of themselves, but it's also a reminder. It's telling our family's story. Like, this is us together as they're putting these core memories on the tree. Aww. And it's something that it ticks all the boxes, and it doesn't feel heavy and like, oh, Jesus is the reason for the season. It's not. They didn't want us to say it with a point. It's like, oh, wow, our hands out. You are the reason for the season, and there's our family. We have so much to be thankful for it. So, and be creative with it. So those are just a couple ideas.
Those are great. But eventually, no matter what you do, you're going to run into this. What do you do with the guy in the red suit? You know, what do you tell the kids? How do you deal with Santa Claus and integrate that whole thing into the Christmas celebration? Right.
Well, if you teach Sunday school or you're a kids pastor, don't mention anything about how real Santa is in a Christmas story at Sunday. The parents don't want, they want to handle that story. I have a friend, just saying, we all have, I'm not talking about me, a friend did that once.
Of course, yes.
But I say keep it rooted in the stories that we were talking about in this podcast. This is a story, a Jesus following man in Turkey saw injustice, didn't want people to be sold into slavery, and Jesus inspired generosity. Keep it there and say, you know, there was a man, St. Nicholas, and you can have fun with the Santa stuff and just keep it in its proper place. At the risk of sounding so cheesy, when you ask me that question, an image, do you remember those Precious Moments figurines that were really big? There's a chapel in Arkansas. Well, Precious Moments figurines used to have a picture of Santa with his hat off, kneeling down in front of the crate. Mm-hmm. Things, I'm not saying go buy one of those, but things like that are also visual cues to remember without getting too preachy and wearing a Jesus is the reason
Yeah.
the season thing. Just remembering. Let's have fun with that. We watch Christmas movies. We'll watch the Santa Claus with Tim Allen falling, or those things. But as long as they're rooted in, this is the fun, but remember the source for the story.
And there are so many opportunities for fun around the holidays. In fact, there's so many that it can fill up your calendar one day, the next day, until you are totally overwhelmed. What's your advice to people who think of it more like Christmas instead of Christmas?
Yeah. Well, there's a one-word prayer that can supersede all others. It helps if you scream it. And it's just going, help! You yell that at the Lord. He'll show up. But seriously, this is coming from someone who doesn't have all of this figured out. I remember last Christmas several times being so busy. I had the thought of, I can't wait until January. I just want the activity part. And all of them were good things. And then I had this thought last year that no is a 2-letter word. It's not a 4-letter word. So we can say it. We can say it as much as we want. And to reincorporate that word back into my family's vocabulary. And not to say no just for the sake of saying no. Say no to the good things so we can say yes to the best things. And it's okay. It's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to not do everything. Our culture, I love the saying FOMO. Fear of missing out. We fear, on the parental side, your core memories are going to be there for your kids, even if you don't go to every single little thing. And just to say, to defend your schedule. There's one of my favorite Christmas movies, which I recommend with reservation. I can't remember what it's rated, but in our culture, that Christmas Vacation movie. And if you haven't seen it yet, the spoiler alert's over. The statute of limitations are out. But there's what's supposed to be a very heartwarming scene between Chevy Chase, Clark, and his dad. How did you do it, Dad? And his dad says, I got a lot of help from Jack Daniels, which is whiskey.
Yeah.
And up until a couple years ago, I thought, okay, it's a throwaway line. But I started thinking, oh my goodness, that says a lot. And it may not be whiskey, but a lot of us try to numb our way through the holidays. And there's pressure. So there's pressure to perform. There's pressure to have a good time and just generate this experience. But just to really trust that Jesus is going to show up, even if it's simple. So say no, guard your schedule, and you don't have to apologize for that. You don't have to be a jerk about it, but also realize people are going to fill up your schedule. If it's not people, obligations or life or work or all those things, if you don't get to your schedule first, something else will. And that is just as spiritual sometimes as praying. It's just not overextending yourself, because it does nobody any good if you're tired. Does your family no good if you're grumpy and just wanting to fast forward the thing? And maybe it's not whiskey, but maybe it's other things like binge watching Hallmark movies. I've never done that. That's a friend of mine. But it's okay if not everybody gets a Christmas card. Or maybe producing that. Maybe you don't have your own photo on it, and maybe you send a stock Christmas card. It's okay. Sometimes we compare ourselves to what we see other people doing on social media and their family, or this. No, don't chase perfection. Chase the presence of Jesus. Chase the things that really matter and that will really nourish you.
I'm going to tag off of something you said earlier about people numbing themselves.
Yeah.
There are circumstances when the numbness comes unintentionally and unavoidably. I think back to my own experience. My wife passed away in October of 2005. It's been a good long time now. But I remember that only a couple weeks after she passed, the Christmas decorations started showing up in all the stores. And I had no idea how I was going to survive that holiday. And there are other people who are facing different challenges, a diagnosis they didn't expect, or an unexpected setback at work or in a relationship. There's this expectation that it's such a joyous season,
Right.
but we don't always feel that joyous.
Right.
What advice would you offer to people who are now into the middle of this holiday season and just feeling that loss?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't mean this to be trite. If you're in that situation and you feel like everyone else is celebrating and something's wrong with you because you've got this trauma that you're working through, you are not alone. That's actually at the heart of the Christmas story. I'm grateful that our culture has all the celebrations and the lights and all of that. The reason why it's a celebratory time is because the Christmas story has pain at the heart of it. That's why Jesus left the comfort and safety of heaven to come and rescue the hurting, the broken, the people who felt like they weren't seen. So that's at the heart of the Christmas story. You're not alone. And also, I would say, don't try to tackle everything. Sometimes you've just got to let the feelings in. You don't have to stay there. But name it for what it is. If it's pain, if it's hurt, if it's sadness, that's real. Don't deny it. Don't try to numb it. Don't try to say, oh, maybe it'll get better next year. Talk to God about it. God can handle all of that. God's the one that, I don't want to say, oh, you're living the Christmas story, so it should be okay. I'm not saying that. But that is the real Christmas story of Jesus being present to those in pain. And so one way to experience that, if you're going through a hard time and don't feel all the holiday warm and fuzzies, is to start small and talk to God about it. And maybe as an act of rebellion in the midst of your pain, do one small act of generosity. Do something nice for somebody, and then reach out. If you don't know who to reach out to us at sgbic.com. You don't feel like you have to figure it out all on your own, especially if there's something fresh, like if you've just lost a loved one and it's the first few holidays are brutal. You're not meant to go through those alone.
Well, I want to thank you for spending this time with us today and for these practical suggestions, because that's what this program is all about, where the rubber meets the road. Do you have any final thoughts you want to wrap up our time together with?
Of course. This Christmas, let's experience the true joy of Christmas and let the food, the laughter, the traditions all point us back to the source of joy, which is Jesus Christ. And this Christmas, if this has helped you at all, please make sure that you like this channel, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment below of your favorite Christmas memory, or maybe there's another topic you'd like for us to tackle on Groundwork, because you make this show better. And we can't wait to see you again next time. God bless you, and Merry Christmas.